Hello and welcome to my channel. Bonsoir et bienvenue sur ma chaîne. My name is Muriel. It's a bit late now, but I wanted to do another video today and I thought, might as well do the NSFW book tag. Sounded like something fun to do, so here we go. So, yeah, this is gonna be pretty boring, but I have actually quite a good relationship with my parents. My mum especially, and they wouldn't really be shocked by anything I read. I can pretty much talk about whatever I want with them. So unless I were to read some sort of Nazi manifesto or something, not that I would, but yeah, sure, they'd be shocked then. Otherwise, they pretty much know what's in my library, more or less. Plus, I read for the most part in my room, my personal space, and they respect it, so yeah. Sorry, I don't have a better answer than that for you. Well, I've never really read any overt horror. As I've mentioned, I do plan on reading some H.P. Lovecraft at some point, so that will be fixed. But in the meantime, I'd say the scariest / creepiest stuff I've read has been within the weird fiction genre. So the first thing that comes to mind is the Southern Reach trilogy by Jeff Vandermeer. I mean, not that I was freaked out, per se, when I read it. I mean, okay, some passages are really bloody creepy, yeah. I won't lie, especially in the second book. There's a particular scene that legitimately gave me chills. So, I suppose I'll go with that for my answer. I mean, I tried, if that counts. I tried reading 50 Shades of Grey, and I couldn't finish it. It's one of the only 2 books I've ever DNF'd in my entire life. Because it was horrendously bad. And I just couldn't do it. But yeah, I tried. So I cheated and watched the movies, which, to be fair, was probably mostly a waste of my time, but at least they were relatively short. And sex scenes, I guess, I mean, they weren't anything to write home about, really. So, yeah. So I don't really do romance novels. If romance is understood to be an actual separate genre from erotica, because I think in some cases romance is basically a euphemism for soft erotica, right? In some cases. But otherwise, in and of itself, no, I don't read romance. I'm not really a fan of romance for romance's sake. That's just not my thing. I've definitely read cringeworthy romantic plots, subplots in other genres, most notably YA fiction of the dystopian or fantasy variety. I've mostly left the YA category behind, though. I think I've more or less outgrown it. So, of those, I'll go with love triangles, especially when the hinge is female, and she has to spend... Okay, I mean, I get that they're teenagers, and, well, they don't have the emotional maturity of an older person. Yes, I get that. And, like I said, I've really outgrown that genre. But, just make up your bloody mind, because I'm not interested in this bullshit, really. Plus, the whole I have to choose one, my one true love is just, no. I'm like, dude, either you do them both, or don't do them at all, and be happily single. That's just my take on it. Now, when it comes to sex scenes, oh yeah, a few examples spring to mind. There are famously cringeworthy sex scenes in the Song of Ice and Fire novels. I've read a pretty gross anal sex scene in a French novel, which I otherwise really enjoy, but that particular bit was a bit not my thing. I've read a few books of the BDSM genre. Not that I am into that personally at all, but that gets a bit over the top for me. Especially the Beauty trilogy by Anne Rice, if any of you are familiar with that. And yeah, I'll stick to those for now. So, as a creative person myself, I don't think that just because you create something that's a bit out there, that means you yourself are insane, right? Sometimes you can write about just batshit stuff, or even creepy stuff, or very questionable stuff, without you yourself being a basket case. Now, that being said, I do think there are exceptions. And this is a bit of a cheat answer as well, because I haven't technically read an entire book by Le Marquis de Sade. I've read excerpts of his works, which were in books about erotic literature. And I was like, nope, this is definitely not for me. I mean, I'm very open-minded. I've read some pretty out there stuff. Like, I've mentioned the Beauty trilogy by Anne Rice. I've read Story of O, which is like hardcore BDSM stuff, like sexual slavery stuff. But the Divine Marquis, like, no, I'm not touching that with a 10-foot pole. I'm not. I don't think it's ever been proven that the guy actually did anything criminal at the time. But there's a certain point where you've got to wonder, if that's all the dude writes about, like, if that's all he ever thinks about, I'd be a bit worried if I were female and close to him or related to him, or like, bro, I don't know, man. I think you need to see a therapist. Not that therapy was a thing at the time, but still. So, I'll go with the Marquis de Sade, although, again, like I said, I have not read any of his works in their entirety, so it's definitely a cheat answer. 50 Shades of Grey. Though it's not because I couldn't take the content, it's because it was just awfully written and ridiculous and just not bloody credible, really. The main character, Anastasia, just got on my nerves so bad, and I didn't even read that much of it, to be honest. And I know for a fact that it does not get better the further you read. So I was like, it. I'm not putting myself through this. I can't really say that I have NSFW thoughts about fictional book characters, but okay, if I had to pick one, I guess I would go with the TV version of Daenerys Targaryen, because, for one thing, Valyrian features, am I right? But on a more serious note, no, I don't really fantasize about book characters. That being said, I'd definitely be friends with quite a few of them. I'd love to have discussions, conversations about their lives, their experiences, their thoughts about different things. That'd be so cool. Good cover art is something I'm actually quite keen on. And for this question, I've selected 5 titles. First, we have 2 novels by the British author Joanna Briscoe. There's this one, Sleep With Me, which is one of her first novels, I believe. And then there's this one, You. I think this one is pretty self-explanatory. And when it comes to this one, well, so you can see there's a teenage girl on the front cover, sitting in a perhaps somewhat suggestive pose. And this is because the story features a relationship between the main protagonist, which is the young woman here, and her teacher. But it's not just about that. It also involves a lost sibling. It's the relationship of her mother with another woman. I quite enjoyed it, so perhaps I'll talk about this in a future video. Now, I should probably mention here that I have a thing for, what would you call that, publishing series, I guess. So, vintage classics often have a certain type of cover art, or Penguin Modern Classics editions always have a certain format and presentation. Then there's the famous science fiction masterworks collection, and so I like to buy novels that fit into those editions, and having several of them in a row in my library is something that, I don't know, I just like that. Speaking of which, so one of those editions I had in mind is the Penguin Classics, and that's my copy of Lady Chatterley's Lover by D.H. Lawrence. Now, I don't know, you tell me. And then I have two books in the Penguin Modern Classics editions. First, I have this, Little Birds by Anais Nin. Now, this is straight up erotica, the sequel short story collection to her Delta of Venus. So it would make sense that it would feature a lying naked woman on the cover. And perhaps the more controversial pick of the lot, this, Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. This is also a 10 plus years old copy. I first read this when I was 14 years old, and I reread this year at the age of 27. I will definitely be doing a review of this because, well, it was really, really interesting to reread this as an adult. The way I see it now has definitely changed with time and maturity. So I think the cover is NSFW because it sexualizes a young girl, which is what happens in the novel. It's not something I would recommend if you're very sensitive to this kind of subject. However, to me, it's one of the most beautifully written novels I've ever read in the English language, so it definitely deserves its spot as a modern classic, I believe. I think I've already mentioned that, yes, I do read erotic literature, especially what are considered classics in the genre. I could cite Story of O, Histoire d'Eau by Pauline Réage. There's Story of the Eye, Histoire de l'œil by Georges Bataille. I've read Fanny Hill by John Cleland, Venus in Furs by Leopold von Sacher-Masoch. I've read the short stories of Anais Nin and her Henry and June. I've read several short stories by classical French authors such as Jean de La Fontaine, Alphonse de Lamartine, Alfred de Musset, Guy de Maupassant. I have quite a few reference books about erotic art and literature. I have a few erotic graphic novels. Why? Because human sexuality is a subject that just, interests me. So yes, I'm familiar with the subject. I feel like this is way too easy to answer because as a fan of dystopian fiction, there are too many examples I could come up with off the top of my head. There's the Republic of Gilead, there's Panem, there's Oceania, there's whatever it's called, like the Republic of Ford or something in Brave New World. And, honestly, I could also go with places like Westeros. I'm a huge Song of Ice and Fire fan, but let's be real here. It's not exactly the friendliest place towards women. I mean, unless I was dropped off in Dawn, perhaps, but yeah. I mean, those are 5 examples right there I would not want to be transported to. So that was the NSFW book tag. I like doing these tag things. They're amusing, so yeah. Hope you enjoyed that. Until next time, have a lovely day. Bye-bye.